I am proud to present before you now our three synthesizers who've been there in different places, who will come up here and tell you in synthesis what's happened in those places. We're happy to have Father Felix D'Souza. If you could please come up. Father Felix D'Souza was with Quality Education. Mr. Condrad Saldanha, who was with us at Preparing Salesians to Lead Schools. And Father Vinod Mascarenhas, who was with us in the Leadership for Teaching and Learning and Curriculum. Each of our guests will present their synthesis in about 5 to 7 minutes to us. And then immediately after that, we'll throw it open to the house. If you have any questions to address to the synthesizer, I'm sure he, along with the group which is present here, will be able to clarify your difficulties. So presenting to you, Father Felix D'Souza.
Good afternoon, fathers. Nice being here. Three of us, the synthesizers, felt that the other two groups which missed out the topic that was taken in one group should know in 5 minutes flat what happened there in 3 hours. So from 9 to 12, what happened in one group, I synthesize and give it to you in 5 minutes flat. In this group, the group that assembled here, there were about 45. It started with, I put in my own words, how do we look at the bigger picture? We have examples of quality, excellent education in our Salesian schools. But how do we influence as a collective network of schools? How do we make an impact into society where there are thousands of schools? So how do we make an impact into the quality of education elsewhere if we think we have it ourselves? Having said that, the first speaker told us that there are a couple of parameters that are necessary for quality education. I like to put point-wise, just in case you need to note it down. So everything would be point-wise. Million-dollar question, how do we motivate our teachers? This will come again and again. How do we make teaching an attractive vocation? At the moment, the 6-Pay Commission has given a certain amount of status, but how do we make teaching an attractive vocation? Third, can we move from teachers to quality leaders? Go beyond. We are stuck with a system of teachers. Can we have leaders who look beyond just teaching and they take care of these components? Fourth, how do we assess our schools? How do we assess? What are the parameters, the goals? I know, fathers, as an Episcopal vicar, 25 parishes I visit, and the schools, do I get a picture of what's really happening there? When I go to the parish, they show me an excellent minutes book of the parish council. I do not get a picture of the quality of parish council interaction. When I visit the school, they take me, there are smart boards there, well-kept classrooms, but I do not get a picture of what education goes on in that school. So what is the assessment system? And the last point he said was, can we go beyond our schools into the private-public domain, partnershiping with them, especially when we have this corporate system of collaborating with schools and society. The second speaker took on the picture of what is learning, Ms. Kavita. And she had 6 questions, very pertinent questions. I think these questions could be very, very helpful in our school assessment. One, How is a school managed? Salesian school managed. Statistics say, and she feels that, we manage our schools quite well. But the other 5 questions are not getting a clear okay. The second question is, how is teaching viewed in our school? The answer is not so good. The third question is, how is our student situated in our school? Fourth, how do we view a curriculum that comes? Are we kind of be barriered by these systems that are given by the government? 5, we have infrastructures and resources. The question is, do we use them well? And the last is, what is our level of participation with society? And the speaker ended with saying, what is the definition of good? When we say we have a good Salesian school, how do you define good? How do you really define good? And what evidence do you have to support this is a good school? And what is the judgment we have to say this is really a good school? Examples given were, one principal comes, a certain idea, a certain focus, and the school goes in that direction. Another one comes, he has different perspective of what education is and a different definition of what a good school means. So how do we address this thing? We had questions from the floor, and they were mainly questions of how do we motivate our teachers? This question took a lot of time. There were no real answers, but probably we are here to address it ourselves. How do we really motivate our, our teachers? And the second thing is, what criteria could we keep for all our schools as the quest for excellence? Different stakeholders, the teachers, the parents, the students, the management, what are the questions we would keep for excellence performance? So 2 main questions from the floor. How do we motivate our teachers? What are the parameters for excellence in our school? I like the ending of that question's time, wherein they said, are our principals trained? Are our principals trained? I know I'm the director for the last 17 years of a big technical school. I see a particular workman, very honest, doing very well, 10 years service, 12 years service, I make him a foreman. As a foreman, he's a total failure. He's still under the cars, taking out the nuts and bolts. He's not managing. So are our principals trained, not only just doing B.Ed, but in terms of having the business acumen, the mindset to collaborate with society, to how to generate resources, etc., etc. The last part is very simple. We had the group discussion. I do not take the first part, which is what ideas struck each one, because different things struck many people. The second and the third were very important. What are we doing in our schools for quality education? And I picked up 5. One is, we do a lot of training for teachers through seminars, in-service training, experts coming, 1. I put it point-wise because you can easily take it down. Second, we do a lot with parents, with the parents. We have the Parent-Teacher Association, counseling for parents, etc., etc. Third, students. We motivate the students through career guidance, through clubs, through group activities, etc., etc. So teachers, parents, students. Fourth, our Salesian presence is very, very important. We are present there and our presence is felt. And fifth, we look at resources, smart classes, holistic training, quality management. These are 5 things we do. What we can do to improve, and with that we end. One, they said, can we get into the marginalized sector? We have not focused on those on the periphery, how we can include them in our training, one. Second, what are we doing, and we are not doing sufficiently well, regarding moral values of the children rights, children abuse, etc., etc. Can we get into the preventive system against all the evils? Second. Third, what next needs to be done to get qualified and dedicated teachers? We get teachers, but how do we move them from one level to the next level? Fourth, this I picked up from also the talk at the tea time. Can we circulate our success stories for continuous relevance so that we are relevant at all times? And fifth, can we invest sufficiently our personnel and our resources for better functioning of our schools? These were the 5 points that came up with regard to what we could do. Thanks a lot, God.
Good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for the opportunity given in terms of being present at this particular function and the role given to me. The moderator of our group was Father V.M. Thomas, and he introduced the entire session in a very meaningful way when he stressed that the speed of the engine determines the speed of the train. So therefore, if we are leaders in our schools or leaders, then we need to determine the speed at which we are taking our schools in terms of the change which is being experienced in the environment. And in that context, the question was asked is, are we preparing people to live in the 21st century in a model which is far outdated? And lastly, relationship is the heart of education. So these were the 3 points given as a preamble to the entire discussion. And the panel members who came after that were the following. The first one was Ms. Lalita Pradeep, who is the Deputy Director of the District Institute of Education and Training, Lucknow. And what she stressed was the way Gandhi envisioned education. And what Gandhi said is education is a tool for the development of consciousness and the reconstruction of society. A lot of emphasis was made on what Gandhi said and what Gandhi did. Like he said, okay, fine, if you want to know my message, look at my life. So there was a focus on ethics and the response of education to a changing world. And therefore the teacher becomes a very meaningful person in terms of the classroom and its environment. She also stated some of the concerns which we are all very much aware of, like the lack of quality, lack of skills and competency, unemployability, we are very degree linked, etc. She also asked whether our schools, in terms of policies, cater to the socio-cultural diversity, inclusion in classrooms, do we give space to create leaders, etc. She then went on to state or give a glimpse on what's the model which she is following, where there is a pre-service, there is an induction, there is an in-service, and there is a post-service experience. Then she touched upon some key areas of leadership. I will not go into all because of a lack of time. I will just mention a few which I feel were very important. Point number 1 was the shared vision and aligning this shared vision or aligning this vision with a larger vision. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is identifying areas which we need to work upon and plan upon carefully. She emphasized the execution part and the looking at routine, we forget about the implementation in the context of routine and creating opportunities for people and creating leaders from within. She also stressed we need to make it all inclusive and we need to respect parents and we need to expand and grow out of our comfort zone. The last point which she mentioned was very important for all of us. She asked the question, what is our powerhouse? So where do we source our strength from? And she came from her own perspective, where she said, okay, fine, our core values as given in our policy, etc., becomes our powerhouse, and therefore we need to go back to it. And for the Salesians, what is our powerhouse? It is the Don Bosco way. So therefore we need to go back to that. She ended by saying we need to be a leader with no shortcut solutions and creating a system and becoming the change. So vision makes the man, which according to Gandhi. That is how she ended. The next speaker was Ms. Sushmita Basu, who was the head of quality assurance and innovation at the City Montessori School, which is also located in Lucknow. Now, she gave us a feel of the 20-odd schools of Montessori which exist in one city, which is Lucknow, catering to around 50,000 students. Now, that is a very stark reality, which is which hits you in the face. Because again, I will repeat, it's 20 schools of Montessori in one city, catering to 50,000 odd students. So she saw a strong similarity between the Montessori as well as the Salesian way of education. And why did she say so is because there is a very strong emphasis on vision and mission. And she mentioned that the whole foundation of the Montessori is the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That is, we are treating mankind and we are looking at ourselves as citizens of this mankind. And therefore we are contextualizing it in this world where we are developing citizens who are peaceful as well as innovative. So therefore, the critical point is the ability to get people to want to change and to lead change. There is a transformational and a transcendent leadership. She emphasized the fact that we need to create leaders from within the system. But however, she also mentioned that there is a danger in this because we seem to be too close to the problem, and consequently, we don't open ourselves up to look out and see all the innovations which are taking place and how they can be imbibed within our system. She also mentioned that we need to have some kind of self-evaluation because we can get complacent. So therefore, even after 53 years, she engaged the agency which is organizing our entire program to do a self-evaluation of their particular school. And they realized that there is a lack of leadership. So they implemented a program on leadership and they did a follow-up, whether that plan has been imbibed and translated into action. To rule and govern is easy, to lead is difficult. We next went on, this is how Ms. Basu ended. Now we get into another area where the moderator gave a very significant input. And the input was that we need to get out of our comfort zone. And he compared it with, did not compare it, but he explained that beyond the comfort zone, there is a learning zone, and beyond the learning zone is a panic zone. And that panic zone is the area of uncertainty which we need to translate into a magic zone. Because once we are there, then magic happens. But because we are emotionally pulled into our comfort zone, we do not give a release to our creative forces, which can create big things out of this uncertainty, which is the panic which changes into magic. And change is development. It is not something that we lose, but it is something which we gain. The whole input was revolved around why don't we dare to dream? And then linking it up with Don Bosco. The questions which were raised is how does one create leaders? How does one create a new future? Now, you know, the interventions made by the panelists were very significant. You know, the whole aspect of 20 years experience, which really is 20 years of 1 year experience. So do we really call that experience? And we need to create leaders who innovate every year, who challenge every year. Now, the other point is leaders, are they made or do we, are they born or are they made? The understanding was that, yes, there is an instinct to be a leader, but the environment plays a role. Circumstances play a role, opportunities play a role. So it is both nature and nurture. So leaders can be made. There are very concrete plans or concrete actions which have been taken to develop leaders. So say, for instance, they have this lesson plan which is very routinized. So you have a lesson plan which you just follow routinely, like a ritual. So what they have decided is, in an innovation class, let the teacher come and teach it the way she wants to, and then develop the lesson plan. So you're giving opportunity and space to become innovative. There is also a focus in terms of developing life skills, in terms of in-service training, and emphasizing on subject knowledge and not just on methodology. The feeling of complacency setting in was also focused on, and how we need to get out of it. Do parents object to change? Sometimes parents want the traditional way of education, but then there is a dialogue which goes on with parents to explain to them the utility of what we are doing. We try to educate parents. The rural-urban is a challenge. It is a challenge, and it is a challenge in terms of inclusion. It is a challenge in terms of upgrading a very mediocre or less than mediocre student to a level which is professional. The need to get commitment in terms of even absenteeism and to be punctual was being experienced. There were various other points which were mentioned. It was a very rich session. I would like to now go on to the working groups and how they fared. The working groups reflected what the panel discussions were all about, but I would like to highlight a few key points which kept on recurring. There was this acronym which Father V.M. Thomas gave, which was SERVE, S-E-R-V-E. And what it all stands for is, first, S, which is see the future, E is engage and develop, R is reinvent continuously, V is value relationships and outcomes, and E is embody those values. So therefore, as leaders, we need to serve, and the acronym was SERVE for what they stand for. This was reflected in all the group discussions. Similarly, values was reflected in all the group discussions. But one major thing which came up continuously in the group discussions was the need to professionalize ourselves. See, education has gone forward, and we seem to be lagging behind. We also need to be aware that there are certain economic constraints which we are under. The rural-urban difficulty also came up again and again. We need to create an institute for leadership training for our principals. The peer learning was also emphasized, and every child matters. So therefore, every child has the potential to become a leader. And we need to look at ideas, implementation, and accreditation. Okay? With that, I would like to end. Thank you.
The third panel, the theme was leadership for teaching and learning and the curriculum. And the panelists, Mona Sirvai, who's been an educator for 20 years. She's presently the principal of Bombay International School. Rajshri Doshi, again, an educator for 28 years. She's presently the coach for senior program managers at Teach for India. And Bhaskaran Ramdas, who is the founder of Vishwabharati Vidyodaya Trust and School. I liked the objective of Mr. Ramdas coming for this conference. He said for much of his childhood and youth, fathers were telling him what to do, and this was one opportunity for him to tell the fathers what to do. The first thing is the difference between education and academics. Education involves application of knowledge. Education involves critical thinking. It's not giving, but bringing out what's within the child. It is understanding people and knowing what people need and providing that need. There are two aspects to education: developing curriculum and content, and second, knowing the individual and unique person and developing relationships. And perhaps this is what we need to emphasize now, the second part, developing relationships, and that's something which was repeated right through the presentation. The second was there's a difference between leadership and authority. And most often what we have in schools across the country is authority, not leadership. Authority is seen as an impediment to learning, and when there is physical coupled with moral authority, discussion and learning stops. Schools must be learning organization, and a learning organization calls for learning at all levels: leaders, teachers, and students, and learning from one another. It is a democratic setup where there is equality in relationships. This point was raised by Mr. Ramdas, who drew inspiration from the Brazilian educationist Paulo Freire. And third, it calls for a dismantling of hierarchical structures. The whole theme is leading education in the 21st century. And Mr. Ramdas said it's not about technology. Technology is there, it's good. But I think what we need is inculcating values and developing critical thinking in students, teaching cooperation and sharing, and developing ecological consciousness. Leaders are mentors. And therefore, what does a mentor do? A mentor shares his or her vision with the rest of the team so that there is an alignment of vision. A mentor understands that the teacher is a human being with his or her own problems and issues, and he or she brings that with him or her to the class. Feedback is important, but when giving feedback, we need to focus on the positive thing. Look for the smallest thing, the good is there, identify it and focus on it. But also point out areas for improvement. And I think I liked this part. With the question, how can I help you improve in that area? So you're not leaving the teacher on his or her own. You're involving yourself in the growth of the teacher. Therefore, accompany your teachers and give them freedom and space. Again, accompaniment and freedom and space kept coming right through. How do you deal with conflict? Conflict will arise. Conflict is necessary for growth. Conflict indicates that thinking is happening among your teachers. How do you resolve conflict? Give freedom. Allow your teachers to deal with the consequences, but you help them, support them to deal with those consequences. Right. These are the questions which were raised and discussed. The first one was about curriculum development. What do we look at to develop curriculum? The key idea is to look at children as living as human beings. And then to use content as a tool to develop skills. critical thinking, holistic development, life skills, which are the objectives of education, which every parent wants his or her child to achieve when leaving school. They mentioned Bloom's taxonomy as one of the tools, as one of the guidelines in curriculum development. The second question, how do you motivate teachers? I think that's an issue which came up in the first group also. The leader needs to be motivated first. And when the leader is driven, that will drive the teachers. Second, the teachers must have a larger goal. For instance, social justice. And it is this larger goal beyond the classroom which will motivate the teachers. Need to involve the community in learning. So it's not just the teacher, not just the principal, not just the school, but the larger community. And facilitate interaction. Find others, places, people who can inspire and create support systems. We ended this question with a very interesting statement. The school is an oasis, something where you come back to draw strength from. How do you deal with the parents' expectations for results and degrees? And the feeling was, as long as parents see real education happening, as parents see positive changes in the child, they won't be so concerned about degrees. That was the felt experience of the panelists. Second, provided there are practical and deliverable goals and methods, parents are happy. Mr. Ramdas felt that when it comes to children from marginalized backgrounds, the degree is important because the degree gives them respect and some standing in society. So give them the degree, that's what they want, but then also go beyond. And we ended that with certain strategies: support teacher acquisition of new knowledge and expertise, strengthen collaboration among teachers, create opportunities for mentoring and sharing of practices, involve teachers in curriculum development, be particular about instructional design, understand assessments of and for learning. Yeah, that's from the Wallace Foundation. Next, evaluate effectiveness in the classroom and provide feedback, sustain implementation and changes in teacher practices, effectively support new and struggling teachers, engage in ongoing job-embedded professional learning, build teacher leadership capacity and skills, and recognize teacher input and decisions. This is kind of a summary of what was discussed. What do we do in our Salesian schools? We have inter-school competitions and we give importance to co-curricular activities. We organize field trips. We do motivate our teachers. We give them trust and freedom with responsibility. We do follow them up. And when this happens, they often exceed our expectations, and this also helps motivate teachers. What do we intend doing? One, to go beyond the curriculum. Two, to foster teamwork and democratic style of functioning among teachers and students. And three, to promote joyful learning. What should all Salesian schools do across provinces? One, develop our own curriculum across the country. Second, share resources, have both student exchange and teacher exchange programs within the province and across provinces. Three, go back seriously to our option for the poorest of the poor. Four, revisit the preventive system with emphasis on presence, and presence not just in the classroom. Five, give attention to individuals. Thank you.